almost have to get to a place of being able to accept that if I decide that I want to stay, I have to be prepared for the potential that I could get hurt like that again. It may never happen, and great, but I have to be prepared for that because there's no guarantees in life. And I also have to trust that I will be okay. I might be devastated, I might be hurt, but that I will be able to continue on in life.
Welcome back, Sarah. I'm excited to talk about trust with you.
Yes, me too. Look, I now trust you a lot after our first chat. So I trust that this will go fine. But no, this is a big one.
It's a big one. It is a big one. And, you know, for someone listening now who's been deeply betrayed or hurt before, what would you want to say to them right now?
Oh, it's so tough. You know, I think being betrayed or having that... It's so tough. I think having that feeling of being betrayed by someone you really care for, and particularly when it's that blindsided feeling, it is like world shattering often. And it can feel like, how is everything going to come back into place again? It's sort of like your world can break into different pieces and it's like, I don't understand how it's going to be back how it was now. And I think the biggest advice from my end is that your world will come back together. It might look the same, it might look slightly different, or it might look completely different, but it will come back together. But it's like too soon now for you to be able to try and put it back together. It's just kind of like, yeah, this is going to hurt and be hard, but it is going to come back together in some way.
Yeah. And it's kind of finding that balance between authentically meeting where you're at, but also to bring some hope into it, because it does feel a bit hopeless when you're in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder whether there's this sort of like rush to put the pieces back together. I just want to kind of, whether it's move forward or move away, but it's like sitting in that place where it's just, is hard. And this is where most people want to be moving. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting you say that, because like, is there an impact on not sitting in it, like not allowing ourselves to sit in the hurt?
Yeah, big time. This is where people will make decisions that aren't really in their best interests or attuned with what they actually need.
Yeah.
So let's say it might lead to forgiving someone too quickly, not holding somebody accountable, or not really thinking about the long-term consequences of deciding that this doesn't really matter and maybe minimizing it. Or it can lead to the other side of things where people just cut off. That's it, end a relationship or cut somebody out of their lives rather than actually sit with and deal with it, where it may not have to lead to a cutoff.
Yeah. Has your family dinner felt like it's been on autopilot recently? We're all looking for ways to feel closer to our favourite people, and the Medibank Family Roast is a card game that helps you ditch the small talk for something more meaningful. Because at the end of the day, a tasty conversation is the best thing you can serve up. Search Medibank Family Roast. Live better with Medibank. It's interesting because like I think what I'm curious about is like, what kinds of hurts do you see most often messing with people's ability to trust again? And how does that show up in their day-to-day?
Yeah, so it would be things, the obvious one is the relationships, you know, a betrayal of some kind in the relationship, like a romantic one where there's either cheating, something along those lines, or it can be one where I would say, let's say with family members or close friends, where there's been a lie, like a really big lie or a withholding of information that feels pertinent to who I am as a person. And now I have to refigure everything out and what I think about myself and the world. And, you know, so sometimes where there's like a family member who's decided not to tell you a certain something about either yourself or them or the family, and you find that out down the track and it's like world shattering, or, you know, it could be a really close friend that has held something from you or told you something that made you believe things or act a certain way and it actually isn't the reality at all. So it's kind of like my whole reality gets shifted.
Yeah.
They're the ones that I think people struggle with the most to do that repair and rebuild the trust.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel like trust, there's so much to that word, especially when it comes to relating with people.
Yeah.
So something that I'm curious about is, how do we learn to build trust from a young age? Because those years would be really informative to how we build trust later on in life.
Absolutely. The blueprint for everything is
Yeah.
created in those
It's like
formative
back in your
years.
childhood or some family trauma. Like, it always comes back to that.
I know, it's so cliche and annoying, but it is.
Yeah, it's true.
Look, it's grounded in some truth there. Absolutely. So we do. It's back to the attachment stuff again. So our primary attachment, the first relationship we ever build, so whoever our primary caregiver is, they are the ones that teach us first about trust. And it can be as early back as, I'm a baby, I am crying. Will I trust? Do I know that if I'm crying that someone will come to me? Do I know that there is a consistent supply of food and nurture and warmth and things like that? So it really comes from such a biological level at first, and where the nervous system really, sort of guides us with that, where how distressed do I get if I'm left alone as a baby, or how, what happens to me if I'm hungry? Is it intermittent when I get food, or are there long stretches where I don't know? So there's this actual like trust about our survival that we, I guess, subconsciously build with our caregiver. So depending on our experiences in that part of our life, that will be the first sort of foundation of that blueprint of whether the world is a good place, a scary place, a place where, we aren't sure. It can be good sometimes, bad sometimes, is it inconsistent? That's the beginning. And then, of course, adding layers onto that as we develop and start to understand what lies are.
Yeah.
What is lying? What happens when we get tricked for the first time? It's like probably our sibling might have played a prank on us or something like that. But, where we get tricked, or we thought something was going to happen and it didn't happen that way. And so we start to, I guess, have these little experiences that tell us about that you don't always know that things are what they are. And depending on what type of support system and coping strategies and narrative that the family has around that stuff will really change how you internalize those experiences, because everybody would get tricked or would get lied to, or, feel someone was betraying them, like my best friend, and then now she's her best friend tomorrow, like there's all these like childhood experiences that are normal for us to go through. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you're going to be a guarded person forever. If you've got a family that could talk to you about those things and help you process and understand what's going on there, and that, there are many reasons as to why these things can happen, and that we do have to question and use our gut instinct and, check in with our tummy and what does it feel like, and does that feel right or not right? So it's all these skills that we either got taught or didn't get taught as children. Role modeling's a big one. Do we see our parents lying or, betraying? Yeah. Is there, whether there's infidelity in family systems and things like that. So there's so many things that start creating that landscape of what trust is for us.
I can imagine some parents that are tuning in being like, oh no, should I not be lying to my child at this age?
Please lie to your children. Let me put you that there. No, children, it's fine to lie to your kids. Or thoughtfully lying to our children,
You're like, reframe.
Yeah. If we thoughtfully lie to our children, I mean, it can be necessary at times. But I do think kids actually are way more resilient than you think. And telling kids the truth about big things in a child-appropriate way, but they sense when you're lying. That's the thing. They don't have those override things that we've got as an adult that override our nervous system and our gut and tell us, no, that's not what's happening. Kids don't have that. So if you lie to them, they usually know, particularly if it's something that you feel uncomfortable about. So it's more around, if I lie to my kids, is it to protect them? Do they actually need protecting from that? Or is it to protect me? Maybe I feel uncomfortable talking about that, So if it's more about you, then I would wonder whether it's worth lying. But no, it's more so the narrative around it, that sometimes people lie and there's different reasons why people lie. So it's even introducing it as a sort of concept to young kids and being able to explore that non-judgmentally, but also, giving them skills and tools of like what happens when we get lied to and when we might feel hurt. How do we manage that? And what would we do next time with that person? Would we maybe wait a little bit longer before we agree to go and play with them? Or would we want to see that they're now acting nicely before we hang out with them again? So it's just like you can even teach these little skills from the beginning.
Yeah, there's always a lesson to everything.
Yeah.
So like when we do say trust, like are we talking about believing someone won't hurt us or believing that we can handle it if they do?
That's a good one because there's, trust in others and trust in ourselves. And I think it kind of overlaps when people really struggle to rebuild trust. It's often partially because they don't trust themselves. If it's a thoughtful choice to no longer trust that person, that's a different story. That's nothing to do with your own self-trust. But when people have decided that they want to rebuild trust and they want to work on it, but they start doing things that get in the way of that, that usually indicates to me that they don't trust themselves. Yeah.
Are you able to share more about that?
Yeah. It's one I see a lot with couples, particularly when there's been a big betrayal. It could be, your partner has actually been using drugs for the last few years and maybe spent most of your savings that you had as a couple, or it could be that your partner has been cheating or had an affair or something like that. I see with a partner who's been betrayed, they can get into a place where they decided they want to stay. They've decided they don't want to leave the relationship. They're coming to couples therapy, but they are not giving their partner the chance to actually repair the trust. Because to do that, you have to give them the opportunity. So they almost have to be given enough leeway to hurt you again. Or to show you that they've learned something and that they really are sorry and that they are making behavior change. And people can be very, very hesitant to let their partner have enough rope to either go whichever way they're going to go with it. So they almost like keep them on this really tight leash. There's this almost punitive, and it comes from hurt and anger and all of that. But there's this almost like, I'm not letting them off the hook. I'm not letting them off the hook. And it's like, okay, well then we're going to stay in that place. Because if you don't know if you can handle being hurt like that again, then trying to repair is not going to go anywhere. You almost have to get to a place of being able to accept that if I decide that I want to stay, I have to be prepared for the potential that I could get hurt like that again. It may never happen, and great, but I have to be prepared for that because there's no guarantees in life. And I also have to trust that I will be okay. I might be devastated, I might be hurt, but that I will be able to continue on in life. So they're those things that I see people really get stuck in these kind of like painful places where, yes, they're not the one that's done the betrayal, but they're now keeping the whole dynamic stuck because of their fear.
It's kind of like they kind of have to give up something, which sucks in a way because they're the ones that got deeply hurt. But
it's like, I already got hurt. Why am I having to do why am I having to do the scary thing now?
Totally. And it's interesting too because like one of the words that I heard from you, like you were talking about repair, and that's a very important part of healing. But also there was another word that you used before around forgiveness. And, forgiveness, I really see that as a really important part of healing. But I'm also curious to know, like, do we have to forgive everyone?
Oh, absolutely not.
There you go.
No, don't forgive anyone. No. Look, forgiveness is an interesting one because there's a lot of different schools of thought on this. And for some people, forgiveness is about forgiving the other. And for some people, forgiveness is actually for themselves, as in freeing myself from hatred, anger, pain, fear of a certain person or situation. So it depends on what angle you're looking at it. But I do believe there are things in life that you don't need to forgive, as in allow that person to continue to be in your space, continue to be in a relationship with them, continue to have contact. I think it's completely acceptable to decide I don't wish to be in this relationship or I don't want that person in my life. I can still also forgive though.
Yeah.
So I can decide that I'm not holding all my hatred and anger for that person anymore, but they also are no longer in my space.
Yes.
So yeah, or if I do want to forgive, what's behind my forgiveness? Is it because I don't like this uncomfortable feeling? Is it that I just want everything to be okay again? Or do I actually value and care for this relationship enough that that there's enough in it that I see the other person is willing and actively doing the things they need to change, that tells me, okay, I'll forgive here.
Yeah. I find forgiveness is such a interesting word because I think sometimes people, when they think of forgiveness, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, if I was to forgive someone, then I'm letting them off the hook.
Exactly.
And I think I actually believe it's not that. In a way, it's like, actually, I forgive, but I don't forget.
Yeah.
And that's like a sign of your own self-respect and what you're worth as well. So it's good to kind of bring a light to the nuances in forgiveness because it can be misinterpreted in a way.
Yeah. And that forgiveness equaling condoning is a big misconception but if I forgive them, am I telling them that that's okay and that they could do it again, or that it wasn't that bad, or that I'll stay if they do it again? And that's very much conflating two very different things.
Yeah.
I can choose to move on from something without agreeing that that was an okay thing to have done.
Yeah, totally. And when it does come to forgiveness, like what does it actually look like to forgive someone? Do they need to have that confrontation or like just be like, hey, look, I forgive you? Or is that kind of like a inner self-reflection process?
It's definitely more internal, which then indicates what type of conversations you're then going to have. So it informs the type of conversations that you're going to have with that person after you've done your own internal kind of, little brains trust meeting around it. And, the heart and the brain have to get together a little bit, and the nervous system plays a big part as well, because I think that this is what gets, when the nervous system has been particularly shocked, it can get in the way of being able to think clearly about what I want to do here. So it does require some time actually before you can get into that real clear space of what would forgiveness mean to me? Does this apply here? Is this a situation where I feel like I can forgive?
Yeah.
Sometimes people try to forgive and I don't think that they're able to.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the reality, is that sometimes we are not able to forgive something. And if we keep on staying in that relationship but not forgiving, it can become abusive in bad situations, because we're sort of, we're not treating someone with respect anymore. When, if I've lost complete respect for you, I feel really hurt and angry by you and I just can't get over it. Staying in relationship with you would not be nice.
Yeah.
Not nice for me, but also not nice for you.
Like walking on eggshells in a way. You don't know. Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be showing up as the person I want to show up in that relationship. And I'm sure the other person is really not going to be enjoying how I'm treating them if I'm still feeling that way about them. So sometimes even knowing when to kind of call it is important, rather than it's like sort of beating a dead horse at times. Yeah.
And it's interesting because it kind of reminds me of the episode that we did before on situationships. And you spoke about, getting really clear on kind of like the goal or the expectation. And in a way, I feel like you kind of have to get clear on what is the outcome from this if I lean into forgiveness,
Yeah. And not knowing what that looks like can be scary. So it's like, if I forgive this person, what will be different? Will we just go back to how things were? And I think there's such a bigger conversation around the forgiveness piece, because I can forgive, but that doesn't mean that there are now not different things happening in this relationship in order to repair. And maybe it's highlighted, maybe what happened highlighted some dynamics that weren't working well that are going to need to be different for us to continue and move forward with this.
Yeah, definitely. There was something that you mentioned before around like the way in which we can potentially rush past the forgiveness or just the way we process hurt. And it's interesting because like some people rush to forgive and others avoid it forever.
Yeah.
So what's the danger in literally kind of throwing glitter on a pile of shit?
Oh yeah, look,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I can think of a few couples that have come in, and
Yeah.
it's like, yep, so my partner cheated, but we're working through it, and it's going really well, and da da da, da. And this is like 2 weeks after, and I'm going,
Oh, wow.
whoa,
Still very fresh.
oh, okay, like that's interesting in itself.
Yeah.
What's going on here? There's this real push for everything being fine, everything it's okay, and I think that is, again, that's protective mechanism. It protects me to tell myself and minimize this, and tell myself that it doesn't really hurt that bad, or it wasn't as bad as it was, or that it'll be different. So this kind of like semi-denial or sort of sweeping of things can mean that we set ourselves up to be hurt again.
Yeah.
Because we don't actually do the proper work to change anything or get to the root of the problem. Because when there's been a betrayal, even with a friendship or in a family relationship, we've got to get to the core reason. And it's not always something really basic and simple, but people usually lie or do things based on fear or based on unhappiness about something or trying to protect something. So we need to drill down to what was the reason the betrayal happened, and what was, if not always, but if there was some type of contribution from me in the dynamic that also sort of helped create the environment in which the betrayal then happened, looking at my part in it. Sometimes you don't have a part in it, and that's fine in different situations, but often in couples there will be some sort of co-creation. People can get a bit funny about hearing that. What do you mean I got cheated on? How is that my fault?
Yeah.
Not your fault. Their behavior is on them to be accountable for.
Yeah.
But we can look at, was I really present in the relationship? How did I show up for my partner? Was there ever any kind of like red flag things that I just turned a blind eye to? Was I not really wanting to see certain things? And that's not always the case, but sometimes there is a part that people, through therapy, you can see the person who's been betrayed get to a point where they're like, okay, I can see this, and this is where I might have contributed.
Yeah.
Still not okay.
Yeah.
But I can see what I've done here that might have helped create that environment where that could happen.
Yeah. And I love that, because I know you mentioned this last time when we were talking about situationships, but it's like we can hold both. Like both is true, being like, this is the shit that happened.
Yeah.
We're not denying that. And like, this is the part that I can play. And I think when we talk about responsibility and taking responsibility, it can be this really heavy word, but in a way it's actually bringing more self-compassion to ourselves. Like we get to own our bit in a way, even though it's a really shitty situation.
Yeah. And I do find it's that standard brain thing where we want to go good, bad. You did this, you're a bad person. You did this, you're a good person. And it's never that simple. Yeah. People can do a lot of bad things and still be a good person. They can do good things and be a bad person. Who's to say? And because we try to look at it on such a sort of superficial level, it gets in the way of actually looking at what the problem is and how to repair it.
So something that I'm curious to know is, like, how do you spot true remorse from apologies that feel quite fake? Because, I can feel like I'm not convinced by an apology, or whether that person who's hurt you really wants to change. Like, you're not just going to rebuild that trust, right?
Yeah. And this is such a great question. Action speaks louder than words, always.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So yes, words are important. I think it's important to hear an apology. Sometimes people don't even get that, right? So sometimes people will forgive without even getting an actual apology, which is a whole nother level. But hearing the words is important as a sort of ground-based level. Yeah. But I don't think forgiveness can really happen until you see the change and the action that's put behind it. And not just for 1 week. And this is where people go a bit wrong, I think. It's like not just for 1 week, not just for 2 weeks. Like we're talking several months. Yeah. Because it's very easy to be on good behavior for a few weeks.
So true.
And if you can't be on good behavior for even a few weeks, then this is like a dire situation. This is like next level. But most people can be on their good behavior for, a month or two. I think if we're getting up to sort of 3 to 6 months, that's actual behavior change, consistent behavior change. So important to get the actual, I think, to hear the other person be able to articulate to you that they're sorry, but also that they understand the impact on you. It's one thing to say I'm sorry, and it's another thing to be able to hear all the ways in which they can see they have impacted you. That's important. Then there would be that real showing the effort and consistency of like, this is where, and humbling themselves, you know, it's like, I understand that, you know, I'm not going to get the same privileges that I got before because I've hurt you, and I have to work back to that place. And if you need to ask me questions, I'm willing to be open. I think to repair trust, actually, this is a big one I see a lot. If the other person isn't willing to be fully open and put everything on the table, because you can get quite cagey. Like if you've been caught doing something or lying or whatever, you can get quite cagey, and particularly if the other person's really upset, you can be like, oh my God, okay, I do not want things to get worse. So you might withhold or like not quite tell the whole thing, or there might be another part and you're like, I'm just not even going to go there, you know, and that will bite you again later.
Yeah.
So really being able to, if you're the person that's done the betraying, I think even if it's really scary, get it all out, because every time you show that you're willing to even get yourself in more trouble just to be honest, that rebuilds the trust.
Yeah.
Yes, they're angry with you. Yes, they're probably hurt again because there's a new thing they've found out, but they've also learnt, okay, they're changing their behavior. They are being upfront and they're telling me things they know will upset me. That's behavior change.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's interesting because like even in that example, it's like so often we think in theory, oh, I just won't share that bit because right now we're working through this bit and or like that's not going to look good. So you withhold from a place of thinking that's the right move. But it really isn't. And that's why I like that idea when you say we're putting it all out on the table. This is all my shit. Are we going to work through it together, or are we just going to put glitter on it, or we're just going to put more shit on it? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because otherwise you're just kicking it down the road and you have less chance of repair because it's like you're adding more betrayals on.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's, that defensiveness, it's almost like I have to let that go away if I want to repair with that person, if I want them to forgive me, I have to be like fully defenseless.
Yeah. So how do you guide someone to rebuild that kind of gut instinct when their judgment feels totally broken?
Yeah. People can get very distrustful of themselves. You know, there's that disappointment or letdown in themselves.
Yeah.
Like, can I even trust my gut? There's an element of that can be true in some circumstances where it's like, I clearly missed something. I would then use that curiosity tool again. So rather than feeling shame about how did I not know? Yeah. You know, because a lot of people beat themselves up about that, or like, I feel like an idiot. So often when someone's been lied to, they will feel like the idiot. Yeah. And I'm like, why are you an idiot? The person lying might be more of an idiot.
Yeah,
you know? Like,
totally.
But you know, you're not the idiot here. So rather than shaming myself, why don't I get curious? Did I not ask questions about things? Did I kind of accept particular stories that didn't really make sense, but I just was like, you know, like how present was I in this relationship or about this particular topic? Are there things that maybe I felt reluctant to push? Is this part of my people pleasing where if someone seemed a bit closed off, I just let it go? Yeah. You know, so looking at where did I maybe see things, but based on just, you know, some of my family of origin dynamics and how I am as a person, do I push for information, or am I just kind of like, you know, off doing my own thing and just thinking everyone else is doing their own things too? Like, am I not present enough in the kind of day-to-day stuff? And it's not about surveilling. It's not about that, but just where am I maybe a bit too hands off?
Yeah. I think it's really good because I think like, I know the times where I've been deeply betrayed and it like completely crushed me for a really long time. But I definitely went through that moment of, oh my gosh, like I completely missed all the cues that my body was telling me like for years. And I definitely went through the shame and the different stages of grief, being in denial and all the different things. But then I eventually got to a place and it definitely wasn't in 2 weeks. So,
No,
you know,
yes.
it was a long process that I was like, oh, wow. But there was something in me that clearly saw there was something off. And again,
Yeah.
it's not throwing like positivity around it, but it kind of helped to cultivate a bit of hope and being like, oh, I guess I
Yeah.
was in tuned in some way.
Yes. And I believe our bodies don't lie. Our nervous system is our
Yeah.
best friend,
Yeah.
even when it's making us feel crazy things. Yeah. It's very rare that we don't notice big things, like important, you know, things that aren't right. We do usually notice, but there are so many like overrides that can happen for so many different
Totally.
reasons.
Yeah.
So I'd be getting curious about those overrides rather
Yeah.
than not trusting myself or my nervous system. I would be just going, okay, what are the little overrides that I tend to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I minimize? Do I sort of like not feed into things and paint things with this beautiful glitter?
Oh, yeah.
Or, you know,
Yeah, totally.
do I just kind of like avoid tricky conversations? Or
Yeah,
there's
definitely.
something there that, I think it's not so much that your instinct's broken. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, in terms of like some of the clients that you see, can you tell me more about people's fears of being hurt? Is that something that you see a lot, especially after being deeply betrayed?
Yeah. And depending on the sensitivities of a person, and what I mean by that is we feel emotions, like it's a spectrum of how intense people feel emotions. I think there's this kind of misunderstanding that we all feel things to the same level. And therefore there can be kind of judgment around like, okay, well that happened to me and like I was fine. So, or I got over it. So like, why can't they get over it? And first of all, I mean, every situation is different, but also we don't all feel things to the same intensity. So we all would know someone who is like very emotional and maybe they cry a lot, or maybe they, you know, they feel things so deeply and they might be super compassionate or like, you know, just really excitable. And then there's those people who are more like sort of just steady going. Of course, they still feel emotions. They can feel sad. They can be depressed. They can be overjoyed, but it just is a less intense experience for them. So depending on what type of and where you are on that range, right? You know, it depending on that will, I guess, inform how you're going to react when something really hurtful happens and how intense your fear will be about it happening again. So even though we only know how bad is to us, right?
Yeah.
But if bad to me feels like I am like unable to get out of bed, or I have like a physical pain, or an you know, it's something that really manifests into this massive overwhelming physical feeling, that will be a lot harder to potentially face again than someone who feeling really bad will feel like a heaviness and will feel like very painful and hurtful to them, but isn't this all-consuming feeling.
Yeah.
So they may have that better resilience to face the potential of that again.
Yeah.
So if I'm, one of those particularly more sensitive people or more highly emotive people, I would probably be more likely to cut off or just not, you know, give people chances where maybe the repair could be really good, but I just can't deal with going there again.
Yeah.
So it really would be around starting to build some of that emotional regulation strategies.
Yeah.
And, you know, how do I deal with my intense emotions? Do I have a support system? You know, do I see a therapist, or do I know what to do when I'm feeling really depressed or hurt? Or are my coping skills just like completely out of like, just rogue, and I'm just like bumbling through life trying my best?
Yeah.
Because the better coping skills you have, you can build trust in yourself to cope with really bad situations again.
Yeah. Which are going to naturally happen in life. So it's a good skill set as well. So can that unprocessed hurt ever sabotage new relationships before they even start?
Yeah. Yeah. So that whole like baggage thing, right?
Totally.
The little suitcases we take around with us everywhere and we bring to relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And awareness is the key piece of this, because you can have baggage. Everybody has baggage. Nothing wrong with it. But if you aren't aware of your baggage, then it will be projected onto the other person.
Yeah.
And if the other person, depending on how aware they are, they might be able to see sort of what's happening and be like, hey, like this isn't about me. Like, I don't know what's going on, but you're throwing some stuff at me and it's not what's happening here. But if they're not aware, they will feed into it and be like, you know, and then it kind of turns into this really sort of unstable dynamic there. So having your awareness of your baggage, you know, whether that's through therapy or some, you know, your own sort of like self-help stuff and reflective work that you could be able to do is key to being able to have a successful relationship, because it's impossible that I'm not going to have baggage, and it's impossible that my partner or my friend or my family member isn't going to trigger my baggage at times.
Yeah.
But if I know what it is, then I can respond differently.
Yeah.
I'm not going to respond to you the same way if I understand that this is actually my stuff that's been triggered and it's not actually you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to blare it at you.
Yeah.
I will know that I need to maybe like do some of my own self-regulation, process it, work it out, but I'm not going to shove it onto you, which is going to stop the little things that sort of chip away at a good relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I know we've like talked a little bit about repair and forgiveness, but what happens if like it's not possible? Like, do people ever get to a stage where they're like, I've tried, it's not working? Do they just need to let that person go?
Yeah. And it can be hard to get to a place of letting go. We don't like to let go of things,
No.
you know, as people. We don't want to let go. Or we're the other type that lets go of everyone when maybe we need to hold on.
Yeah. Where's the middle ground? We can really pendulum swing, can't we? Yeah.
Totally. That's it. Literally everything in therapy is about finding the middle ground, right? So yeah, if I know that I'm someone that tends to not let go, what is it about that is keeping me in this sort of like false safe place? Because there's this like faux safety about holding on when really I'm holding on to something that I've already understood is potentially unhealthy or not trustworthy and causes me pain. And yet I keep holding on. So it's that familiarity. You know, we love familiarity. Even if it's like the devil we know, right? I know that you're probably going to hurt me, but I know the ways in which you do it and I know what to expect and I know that I can handle it. Like there's a subconscious sort of understanding that like, okay, this type of pain, I know I can survive. This type of unfamiliar pain, I don't know. So we'll just deal with this.
Yeah. There's so many layers to it. If someone's obviously being deeply hurt and they're in a new relationship, something I'm curious about is like, what's the difference between guarded in a healthy way versus being emotionally unavailable?
Yeah.
You know, there's such a slight difference in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people can think they're doing one thing when they're doing the other. So people can be like, no, this is just me, you know, taking things slowly and making sure that I'm not being fooled again or that, you know, I'm not going to trust someone too soon. The problem though is if you are not allowing a new connection to form, you're going to push away potentially a good new person because you are too guarded, which is more just that I've not let myself be emotionally available. So I would be looking at where do I get in the way of the other person getting to see the real me? Because if I'm not giving much of the real me or like vulnerable me in safe snippets, like, you know, and I think this is the thing that time is a big factor in this, where people don't sort of consider that over time, I need to be giving bigger and bigger chunks of me. In the beginning, I don't know someone very well, so my trust for them is small.
Yeah. So
the vulnerability I give is small. And as I grow to trust them and know them, that grows, and my vulnerability that I should be giving grows. So it's sort of like the two have to grow at the same time, rather than I've known you and trusted you over time now, but I'm still only giving this little bit of me. That's eventually not going to be enough for another person. Yeah. So I'd be looking at like, have I been giving little parts of myself? And if not, what do I feel like I could start trying to give?
So something else that I'm curious about is, what kind of practical tools do you use to help them build their confidence to know that they need a trust, but if they get hurt again, like that's going to be okay?
Acceptance is a key strategy in this, right? Where if I go into something thinking, I'm not going to get hurt again, I'm not going to allow that to happen, I'm never going to go through that again. It's this real like rigidity, and it's also like this energy that's just intense, and it doesn't allow for possibility, nuance, new things happening. And so acceptance around the fact that I can't guarantee that I'm never going to get hurt again.
Yeah.
Is a big part of it. So how do we accept that? I mean, acceptance isn't a one and done thing.
Yeah.
It's sometimes we have to turn our mind to acceptance many, many times. And it could be a million times in a day, could be once a day, could be, every time we just get triggered again and we have to go back and work on that acceptance piece. But it's sort of like, I need to accept that there is possibility that I will get hurt. That's sort of a part one. And then the part two is, do I have enough resources and support around me as far as like my own coping skills, maybe a therapeutic support, friends, family, whatever, that tells me that even if I am hurt again, that I know that I have enough support around me that I will get through it. Because it's like that's the foundation to feeling safe enough to trust again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also trusting that I have learned from previous experiences.
Yeah.
We have to give ourselves that grace of, okay, I have to have learned something. And as long as I am curious about what I've learned and I actually keep that in my sort of front part of the brain is how I like to call it, in terms of like in our general ability to recall and implement that into our decision making versus like, okay, that happened, that was shit, put that to the back and just like never think about that again. I'd be really using that curiosity and learning and keeping it in my frontal part where I can pull from it when meeting a new person.
Yeah, so true.
Because I'm not the same person now as before I learned something about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we are different now from that experience.
And I know there'll be people who go, yeah, but I keep on getting into the same thing. And it's like, yep. And what are the things that you are pushing to the back of your brain, and those things that you may be noticing but not responding to or minimizing that are keeping you in that cycle?
At what point does protecting yourself start costing you the kind of connection you actually want?
When you can see that the other person is giving more of themselves than you are and are kind of looking for it, I think that's a big little warning bell where it's like, okay, they might be asking me questions about me or about my life experiences, or and do I notice that I'm giving sort of surface answers, or there's things that I'm like, well, not going to talk about that, or don't go there, because even if you're very good at kind of masking and hiding that, the other person is going to pick up on it, that there is sort of like an end point to how far you're willing to go. And that's okay. Like you don't have to be giving everything immediately, but if it doesn't change over time, that's where it's like you are going to impede your ability to connect with this person to make something deep and foundational. But I do also think that it can depend on the other person, because if the other person is also like that, let's say if you've got two hurt people coming together that are very guarded, it does become one of those kind of those avoidant relationships where we're surface level, we don't go too deep, we don't know that much about each other's past. I've got some couples that come in who basically don't speak about previous relationships, and I just think, oh my goodness, do you know how much gold there is in there? Like we don't need to know like the ins and outs and every single detail, but just what are some of the experiences that your partner has had in life that would shape them? That's important for you to know. That's a big learning piece for both of you.
Yeah, totally. And it takes courage to lean into that vulnerability, but we all know like vulnerability fosters more connection, safety, respect as well.
Yeah. But again, this isn't something that needs to be done right away, but over time it should be building blocks into how much vulnerability that I give, and also that I should be getting.
What would you want to say to someone right now that's kind of learning how to trust again and they're on that journey of healing right now?
I would say don't rush yourself. Don't judge yourself. It's okay to have good days and bad days in it. I think it's not a linear thing. Like with anything, it is, some moments I feel like, yes, I can let them in again, and then other moments it's like, absolutely not. Oh my God, what if they hurt me again? So, being able to just be kind to yourself as you go in the ups and downs, but just keep I think it's keeping the aim of what you're actually looking for at the head there, where it's like, I'm looking for my ability to keep being open and honest about how I'm feeling, and if I'm feeling insecure or if I'm worried that they're doing something to me again, being able to communicate it, being able to regulate myself so that I don't keep putting my fears onto the other person. I regulate it, I communicate it. And then the third one is, what am I seeing from them? How do I reassure myself or just keep aware of whether they are pulling their part? Are they consistently showing that behavior change? Are they being defensive? Are they being workable? Are they willing to do therapy or make some changes to ensure that this isn't going to happen again? And have they looked at the actual root of the problem? And just reassure and remind yourself with that as you kind of keep working through your own sort of up and down with it.
So when it comes to rebuilding trust, like how much of the details do we need to go in from the past, like to get that kind of closure in a way?
This is something that can be make or break for a lot of trust rebuilding situations, because of course it's important to know enough detail that you feel that you have a clear understanding of exactly what the betrayal was, like in terms of, that's how we categorize in our brains. How bad was it? Was it this level of bad? Did they do this? Did they do that? Or was it just this? So that's how our brain tries to categorize. So we do get into this kind of thing of needing to know, particularly when we're very anxious about being hurt again. Sometimes people go into this detective mode, I call it, where they just have to get all the clues and all the details, and it can become a bit of a vicious cycle where it's never enough. And then it's like, oh, tell me again. So what happened after you texted her? And then at what time did she write back?
Yeah.
And then this happened. But hang on, but last time you said this. And so it can become this kind of digging operation for more. And it's an attempt to self-soothe, but it actually just keeps you really stuck, and it can keep those wounded feelings coming back. And the other person is probably, really hopefully trying to rebuild the trust. So they're trying to be really honest and open, but it gets to a point where you're actually not getting anything helpful for the repair, and already enough of the bad stuff that it's not like there's anything extra bomb that you're going to get dropped. It's just I'm now just hurting myself and getting in the way of the repair. So in those situations, I really advise couples, once you got to air it out properly. You have a couple of really in-depth conversations and get all the detail out. After that, there's an expiration date on going through the details again. It has to just kind of be okay, if I go back into those kind of questions and digging again, either you call me out or I try and notice it and be sorry, I'm doing that thing again. I'm just feeling anxious, or I'm feeling insecure, or I'm worrying that you're doing it again. That's okay to say things like that. But to, kind of keep bringing up and trying to dig for more, it's this sort of torturous experiment that just doesn't get people anywhere. And it really stops people from moving forward. Yeah.
I really like when you said there's an expiration date on the details.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a point where enough is enough. I know enough of the bad that I can put it in the category that I need. And then it's this is now just torture.
Yeah, just got to let it go.
Yeah.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters on which this podcast was recorded.